Welcome back, my friends. Currently, we're on day 315 of Russia's disastrous invasion of Ukraine, and it feels like it was just last week that here on the channel we were marking the occasion of over 100,000 soldiers fighting for Russia killed so far in this war. But here we are on January 5th, and this number is already 109,720. An additional 810 soldiers fighting for Russia estimated were killed just yesterday. This war is getting more deadly for Russia as they're using more and more conscripts and mobilized men without good military training on the front lines. In addition to the cold, it's the winter time. But we need to talk about this incident that occurred on New Year's Eve. Fury mounts in Russia over stupid losses caused by devastating Ukrainian attack. Russian lawmakers are demanding that someone be held accountable for hundreds of deaths on New Year's Eve. Anger is mounting in Russia over a devastating Ukrainian attack on army barracks, which may have resulted in the deaths of hundreds of newly mobilized Russian soldiers. So if you don't know where this incident occurred, it occurred in the town of Makiivka. This is just to the east of the city of Donetsk. This is in the Donbass region. And the building that was struck was some kind of local vocational college. The accounts of mobilized Russian soldiers who survived this Ukrainian Himars strike on Makiivka are beginning to emerge, many more than the official Russian estimates of 63 reported killed. There are quotes here from survivors. "We are cleaning their brains off of our boots." And this is what the building looked like. This was a 3-story building with a basement. And this is what the building looks like now. This is what 4 HIMARS missiles did to this building. And the reason why the impact and the explosion was so devastating is because not only were the Russians housing hundreds of recently mobilized men in this building, they were also storing ammunition there. A single HIMARS was enough to make the entire building blow up. Initially, the Russian government was only willing to admit that 63 of their soldiers were killed in this attack. But because there's been so much anger and outrage inside of Russia over this incident, the Ministry of Defense in Russia has revised this number up to 89. However, the Russian government, the Russian military, they lie about everything. So more than likely this number is closer to 400, 500, or even 600 killed in a single incident on a single day of men who were recently mobilized. And here's Russia's problem. Russia has finally understood that leaving troops in foxholes for the night during winter kills them by hypothermia. Now Russia is rotating troops from foxholes to buildings in the rear for the night, where HIMARS are killing them. So the problem Russia has is that their troops have garbage equipment, garbage warm weather gear. So the way that hypothermia kills you when you're sleeping in a foxhole in freezing temperatures is you go to sleep and then you never wake up. When your core body temperature drops for hours on end, you kind of get sleepy and then you just never wake up. So what Russia is currently trying to do is rotate their troops out, maybe for 12 or 13-hour shifts. There's maybe a day crew and a night crew so that they don't all freeze to death in the Donbass region. Russia's other unsolvable problem is if they spread their troops out to avoid a HIMARS incident, then their troops don't get anything done and they just lie about everything. The majority of the soldiers fighting in Ukraine now are more than likely conscripts or mobilized men. These are men who had every opportunity to volunteer to go to fight, and they chose not to. So their motivation level is pretty low, and more than likely they just don't want to die. So if Russia spreads out their forces, this is what the Ukrainians do. The Ukrainians have converted countless civilian homes into mini garrisons where 6 to 12 Ukrainian soldiers sleep and live. You spread them out so that a single strike cannot cause mass casualties. However, for the Ukrainians, they're motivated to win this war. They will still do what they're told to do, and they're not going to lie about it. But when you spread the Russian forces out, they just kind of sit there. They're just trying not to starve to death or freeze to death. They're not taking initiative. They're not following orders. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So Russian commanders want to concentrate them. They want to gather them together in order to supervise them and motivate them to do their jobs. But if you get dozens or hundreds of Russian soldiers together in one building, it's going to get Himarsed. This is the reality. This is the unsolvable problem that the Russian military has been experiencing for the last 5 months. Here's an interesting interview done with the Kyiv Post. Why Russia is blaming the devastating Makiivka strike on mobile phones. The Kremlin's official death toll has risen after more bodies were found in the rubble. So let's ask the question, is mobile phone use a feasible explanation? Absolutely. Since the early days of the war, the lax use of mobile phones by troops have allowed both sides to pinpoint the location of the enemy. So yes, this building, the location could have been given away by Russians taking pictures of each other without geotagging taken off, and then this information was leaked on the internet. But there's also satellite imagery from Western intelligence, in addition to partisans behind enemy lines willing to phone in these troop concentrations to Ukrainian intelligence. So it doesn't really matter if it was a cell phone or a satellite or a human calling in the position. Russia just can't do this. It's inexcusable to concentrate 400 to 600 recently mobilized men in a building that is also holding ammunition. So here's the question, why won't they, the Russian military, take responsibility? And the reason why is because the backlash inside of Russia to the strike has been immense, and there are calls for those responsible to be held criminally responsible. The Telegram account of the influential war correspondent Rybar, which has around 1 million followers, said it was criminally naive for the army to store ammunition next to sleeping quarters. Lawmaker Sergei Muranov said, all the higher authorities who did not provide the proper level of security should face criminal charges. So is there a captain or a major or a colonel out there who was in charge of this unit storing them in this building? Should they face criminal charges and responsibility for losing the lives of hundreds of recently mobilized men? And you're not going to see any responsibility being taken from the top. Here's a clip of President Putin and Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu talking via webcam, and this is the day after the attack.
Сергей Кужьевич, здравствуйте. Добрый день. Да, слышите вас? Ну, спасибо, вас тоже. Сегодня у нас важное, если не сказать знаменательное событие. Фрегат.
So this is the day after thousands of their soldiers were killed. In a democratic country, this would be a day of mourning. You would get some kind of acknowledgement or press release, I guess, from the president or the Secretary of Defense. But in Russia, it's all smiles. Happy New Year's, Happy New Year's. Let's talk about this new frigate that we're launching into the Atlantic Ocean, pretending like there's nothing wrong and everything is going great for the military. Here's a clip that went viral of Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu partying on New Year's Eve, and this is the same night that this missile strike took place. I don't really know why he's wearing a jean jacket to a New Year's Eve celebration, but there is a possibility that this clip is not from this year. People have argued that this could potentially be from a previous New Year's Eve celebration. But is it that far off from the official Kremlin broadcast on Channel 1 state TV? Everyone dressed up, looking their best, smiling and laughing, partying in the new year, pretending like nothing is going wrong in their country. Meanwhile, every week it seems like there's a clip that goes viral of the wives of Russian mobilized men publicly filming a video for the internet begging the military to help their husbands, help their fathers and brothers, get the proper equipment, weapons, medicine, whatever. Let me show you 30 seconds of this clip.
Мы жены мобилизованных города Бийска. Наши мужья прикомандированы в 55-й бригаде, Республика Тыва, город Кызыл.
Ротный Маклаков, мобилизованный с города Бийска. Командир Кочнев.
Просим отозвать наших мужей с линии соприкосновений село Житловка.
And it would make sense. It would be in the military's best interest to conserve lives if they put conscripts and recently mobilized men into support positions, driving trucks or whatever. But to immediately put them on the front lines, you're just asking for mass casualties. You're using those men as cannon fodder. And what Russia is doing is they're attempting to save and conserve the lives of their professional trained soldiers. They're trying to stop the hemorrhaging and loss of their volunteers who are usually better trained and better motivated. They're moving those guys off the front lines and tossing mincemeat. They're tossing cannon fodder. They don't care if these men they're sending to the front lines live or die. And let's now introduce a new character. I've never mentioned this guy on the channel before, but this man is Igor Girkin, and he's a Russian army veteran and former FSB officer who played a critical role in the annexation of Crimea back in 2014. He's an ultranationalist, very much in favor of this war in Ukraine, but Girkin was dismissed from his position in the FSB back in 2014 after the shooting down of Malaysian Airlines Flight 17. Dutch prosecutors charged Girkin and 3 others with murder, and there's an international arrest warrant to bring him to justice. He's also been sanctioned by most countries in the world. However, during this invasion so far this year, Girkin has regained prominence and attention as a military blogger, taking a strong pro-war stance but fiercely criticizing the Russian military for what he saw as incompetence and insufficiency. So I have no clue how this guy is allowed to say whatever he wants, but he's very much pro-Russian and in favor of this war in Ukraine, but he loves to trash the Russian military leadership. He thinks they've bungled this war and it's going horribly. Let me share the first 30 seconds of this clip with you.
Почему в условиях путинского режима поражение на Украине приведет к смуте или распаду страны? Во-первых, я не считаю, что поражение на Украине будет понесено до начала смуты в Российской Федерации. Это как раз смута в Российской Федерации может привести к поражению на Украине. Да, отдельные поражения на фронте могут стать детонатором, даже в будущем году могут стать детонатором для начала смуты здесь. Для попыток свергнуть президента, для попыток провести переворот. Но
So I agree with what Girkin is saying. If Russia wants to keep fighting this war, let's go ahead and project out what this might look like if the political structure in the Kremlin remains intact. Russia, let's just go ahead and round off and say in the first year of this war, they lost 100,000 soldiers. So how many soldiers is Russia capable of losing And it might be close to 500,000, 500,000 before they literally just run out of men that they can abduct off the streets. So at that rate of loss, Russia conceivably could continue this war for another 4 years. We're just done with year one, 100,000 dead. 400,000 more to go would be 4 more years. So what Gherkin is saying is that the only way for Russia to lose this war is if there's a political change, a political collapse. If someone in the Kremlin or some coalition finally decides to remove Putin from power. Putin is willing to go the distance, to drag this war out 5 years and commit to losing 500,000 of his own soldiers. For other czars of the past in Russian history, that casualty number is not unreasonable. I think the Soviet Union lost close to 26 million people fighting World War II. And this is the only way this war can end. Putin has to go. And we might be able to achieve this with economic instability. If the Russian economy suffers so badly, that could trigger the necessary political reform to end this war, to cause the Russians to be finally defeated. Also, good news for the Ukrainians and everyone in the West, the Russians are incompetent and both corrupt. Here is a story about the governor of the Samara province. This is the province where most of these soldiers killed on this New Year's Eve strike are from. And in response to the strike, the governor has ordered volunteers to collect clothing donations from the public, including underwear, for the survivors of the Himars strike on Makiivka. Yeah, so this is not getting a good response from the people of this region. The governor's daughters this year somehow managed to purchase a home in downtown Moscow for millions of dollars. Yet the public is being asked to hand over their underwear for soldiers dying on the front lines in Ukraine. Militarily, how has the Russian military responded to this attack? And Russian strike in Donetsk caught on live TV. Ukraine pushed back on Russian claims that a Himars was destroyed in a series of attacks, one that was even captured on live French TV. So I can't play the clip, but I'll link it in a pinned comment down below if you want to check it out. But Russia claimed that they destroyed a Himars launcher that was being stored in this ice skating rink. These pictures have gone viral. To refute Russia's claim, Ukrainians have taken pictures of the ice skating rink the morning after the attack, saying that this was used for humanitarian relief. There's boxes of food and supplies, and there's jugs of water. There was absolutely no military equipment being stored at this ice skating arena, but Russia's going to go ahead and claim whatever they want to claim. Here's the next piece of good news for the Ukrainian military. Ukraine's locally produced artillery shells have reached the front. Ukraine is producing its own artillery shells as stocks globally are under pressure due to the huge volume of use in the nearly year-old war. And apparently they're yellow. This is what they look like. They've already been photographed and observed being used on the front lines. Whatever factory inside Ukraine is making these 152 millimeter rounds, this is a valid military target. The Russians should be going after this factory. However, they don't know where it is. They don't have the intelligence to find it. So out of frustration, what do? They bomb concert halls and ice skating rinks because they don't know how to defeat the Ukrainian military. Russia making slow progress in Fortress Bakhmut. This is according to Wagner boss Prigozhin. And I'll let you be the judge what the progress has been made for the Russian forces. Here's the city of Bakhmut, and this darker magenta color is territory that was controlled by the Russians prior to February 24th. So in 10 months of fighting, 10 months of war, the Russians have only advanced about 20 kilometers, making it to the outskirts of the city of Bakhmut. And while they were advancing those 20 kilometers, they simultaneously were losing thousands of square kilometers in the Kherson and Kharkiv regions. I don't know if I would call this significant progress. And here's an update from the streets of Bakhmut from one of our favorite Ukrainian defenders. Her call sign name is Witch, and apparently she speaks English. This is pretty fascinating to watch. She put out this clip from the city center. Total runtime is about 3 minutes, so I'm going to cut this up slightly and show you about 90 seconds of her speaking pretty good English.
Hello everybody, I'm a witch from Bakhmut. Today, January 4th, and we are in the city of Bakhmut, which is the 6th month in a row widely defended by armed forces of Ukraine. We are performing combat tasks here. At the beginning of the month, the occupying forces received reinforcements, refilled their ammunition, and now they are trying to break through our defenses. Russians now are using prisoners and mobilized soldiers for assault. What I mean, these infantrymen released ahead of the professional assault units of Russian army, and they are used for demining and conducting combat reconnaissance. They conduct demining simply by walking through minefields. As for me, it's horrible. This reveals savagery, in my opinion. Furthermore, some actions of Russian command resemble collective suicide. Unfortunately, the population of Russia doesn't see any problems in that. In general, armed forces of Ukraine control the situation. We are highly motivated. We are still on the defensive, and we are not going to retreat.
Her English is pretty good, and it's obvious that she chose to speak in English today because the defenders in Bakhmut know that people around the world are watching these daily update videos. It was a different Ukrainian defender who decided to start doing this every day about 3 or 4 weeks ago. But I think there's a lot of channels that look forward to these daily updates from the city of Bakhmut, and getting the message out in English will only reach more people. Here's another clip I want to share with you of Ukrainian defenders opening up a new shipment of gear for them to use.
Та підожди, дай. Ну телефон, подожди. Братва, тут розпаковка, чергова подача, вже стільки Збройні сили не видавали нам таланчики. Бачите, які шикарні. І перчаточки зимні. І рюкзаки ЗСУшні піксельні. Коротше, щоб ви розуміли, в Збройних силах є це, так що не хвилюйтеся.
So this is the difference between the Ukrainian forces and the Russian forces. Every Ukrainian on the front lines are getting the small things you need to survive in a trench. They're getting the boots, the socks, the gloves, the jackets, the hats, and even underwear. They're not relying on underwear donations from Siberia in order to fight this war. Here's a hilarious picture. This is Ukraine's top intelligence chief, and he celebrated his birthday, and somebody baked a cake in the shape of the Russian Federation, and every time you cut the cake, you break up Russia. That's pretty clever. The final clip I have for you is of Ukrainian defenders not only learning to walk again, but learning to play football again.
Вечір добрий, пані та панове, ми вас раді вітати на майданчику 96-ї школи, де в рамках тренування сиківських ангелів сьогодні зустрічається команда кольорових проти салатових. Тишко у воротах кидає вперед на Гука, однак там Репетило зіграв вдало на перехопленні, ну і одразу маємо можливість озвучити вам склади обох команд. Цього разу непогано Волохівський відзахищався, він виступає за кольорових на пару з Максимом Гуком, у захисті працює у нас непоганий новачок команди сиківських ангелів, про якого ми ще чимало будемо сьогодні говорити, це Чубко, ну і у воротах Тишко. Зелені зараз намагаються зусиллями вітрового, Фолюти, також Борис.
That's all for this update video. Glory to the heroes, glory to Ukraine. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support my channel. Comments or questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, take care, be safe.